think it's really possible for people in this day and age to get over their traumas? And isn't that the whole point of life at this point in time? Because it seems like this society is based on trauma, and that we're brought up into this society of trauma where everyone's running away from their pains into a little niche that they can feel comfortable in. But I see that spirituality is about deconstructing that, or removing those aspects that we lean on so that we can depend on something within ourselves that's more genuine. But it's where do relationships fit into this? Because it seems like kind of a lonely path, is it not?
Well, the whole path at this day and age is the path of self-refinement. And the self-refinement does not exclude any part of life. And life in general is an unconditional flow. Should not be separated or divided into different parts. This is spiritual, this is personal, because everything is spiritual and everything is personal, and everything is seen only from the perspective of oneself, where every individual is a part of the collective, but every individual contributes to the collective. And unfortunately, what the majority contributes is the traumatic experiences. So the collective is burdened by the traumatic experiences of the majority of individual souls. And now, if an individual soul is traumatized, it cannot always look at itself objectively. So relationships and the goal of relationships is not to entertain or to have fun or just even to have a companion, but it's to understand that every relationship and this power of attraction with which this relationship is brought into everyone's life has an evolutionary meaning, and the meaning is to invoke the essence. But when we invoke the essence through the feeling of love, we also invoke all that which veils the vessel, the essence that veils the self, which is traumatic experience or traumas. And even though sometimes we do not think of our experiences as traumatic, but they could be, for instance, experiences which bring us certain deep impressions in our consciousness, be it positive or negative impressions. And they attach us to the idea of life, to a certain concept where, or through which we lose the sense of reality. And this reality is this equanimous, unconditional perception where the majority of people are either ignorant about it or have never experienced it. And where the predominant perception is the perception of veils, traumas, in a sort of in a form of a collage, where this collage kind of colors our idea of life or our interpretation of life, because what we see, all this facade of life, facade of relationships, and which we emphasize within ourselves, is much less important than the actually evolutionary side of relationships, where we experience clashes and feelings and emotions, and where through which we invoke also our traumas, the traumas which we experienced during our early childhood, or not necessarily traumas, but any kind of experiences we had with our primary representatives of the world, which were our parents and other closer um, relatives. So these are the feelings which are still there, and no matter whether you have experienced temporary love or spark with someone, or you're interested in developing a relationship, and you think that if everything goes fine and you have this external facade through which you experience or have a good time, uh, and your consciousness tries to kind of persuade you that this is all what relationships are about. Plus, we have movies, we have books, we have novels all about this sort of an external side of relationships. But no one speaks about the relationships as the main evolutionary driving force, where uh, one or through which one refines and invokes all the traumatic experiences first. Yes, there is first the feeling of excitement, infatuation, love, attraction. And this force is extremely necessary, because this is the force of consciousness itself, and consciousness attracts an experience to itself. But it looks like as if this experience is from outside, yet the truth is that it seems as if it is outside, but in fact it is two sides here. There are two sides. One is as if we attract a person with specific qualities, but at the end of the day it is the feelings that this person invokes within ourselves, and these feelings are the important points which we have to emphasize. So relationship is not much about the facade, because the facade is a pleasant side, is the way we express something, but it's also about how we feel. And if we refocus from the facade, from the external demonstration of feelings or thoughts or behavior, into more internal, kind of an internal view of what we actually experience when we're with someone, what is invoked when we clash with people, how we react. So we shift from the external projection and analysis into internal contemplation and perception. And this can give us much deeper clue of who we are. And with proper contemplation and spiritual guidance, we're able to navigate through any sort of experiences in the past and the repercussions that we are facing right now, or some kind of natural results of these traumatic experiences, or any kind of experiences. And also, at the moment, we're able to understand that the driving force behind our choices. So it's not just about feelings, it's also about choosing. It's about navigating through the life path and understanding our inclinations and what actually shapes our life path, and what are these sort of forces that we usually call destiny. Is there such a thing as destiny, or these are just forces which are again empowered from within ourselves, and have the seeds of our traumas, of our distortions shaped through our first life experiences in our childhood, let's say, and so on and so forth. Because people usually speak about past lives, we can't prove it, we can't, recall usually, unless there is such an experience of recollection. But we can understand our inclinations and distortions by observing our family dynamics, by observing the environment we were born into, and understanding how it shaped our perception of life, not just the conceptual external facade of life and sort of conceptual external understanding of life, or how we should live life, but also our internal perception. Very often, the way we are brought shows how we faced our how we faced actually life in the early childhood, what kind of experiences we had, how we were step by step brought out of the natural flow of life into the man-made reality, into the unnatural flow of life, where we were told what to do, what not to do, and these sort of impulses in the of the nervous system, these reactions, these ideas shaped our further sort of dynamics of life, dynamics of relationship, our own representation in the world, and our own sort of idea of the self. And most of the time, these ideas are based on the way we felt life at first, not the way we thought of life, because when we are born, our thinking apparatus or our analytical apparatus is not yet shaped or formed, but we have these primal reactions which further on shape our idea of life, and we can say shape our life path, shape our relationships, because our nervous system cannot be fooled. We can analyze, we can intellectualize, but we can never fool our nervous system, because our nervous system and the way it is used to react to the stimuli from the outside, from our parents, the different commands we receive, different do's and don'ts we are told to do and not to do, they shape our understanding of the self. They make us feel whether we are empowered by the people around us, or whether we're disempowered, whether we're abused, taken advantage of, or not. And it's on a very subconscious level. We perceive reality at that age, between birth and 5-7 years old. We perceive literally on the level of transmission. Because if there is sexual abuse, even a thought of sexual abuse, the child feels, even if they're not touched and nothing is done, even a look, because the action is not just the physical action, it is a transmission of consciousness. And this is what many people don't understand when they try to figure it out, how the traumatic experience has been shaped. And so they deal with the memory and the action, and they blame themselves, but they can't understand that it's not just the action, it's the interaction between one consciousness embodied and the other consciousness embodied. And this interaction has been on an invisible level, and this interaction then brings it leaves an imprint. Even if there is no actual sexual abuse, there is an intention, and this intention shapes then that consciousness's response, because there is some distortion, the corruption has already occurred. Because let's say if someone experiences abuse from their parents, whether it's a threat, whether it's a physical abuse or sexual abuse, and even if they don't experience it, but there is only an intention, consciousness perceives that as waves, and there is already a seed of corruption that will further on sprout out during their adulthood. And so seeing all that life, kind of life behind the scenes, behind actions, behind the external facade of what we call life, we understand that life is so much more than just our physical actions or our words or our interaction with other people, but it's first of all what is left or what stays with us after all these interactions, after all these experiences, and how we shape our understanding of life through these experiences and these reactions. So, and also our impulse to life, because our nervous system is so much used to experience certain stimuli that when we are adults, all these situations are no longer there, but that that anxiety, that sometimes expectation of a stimulation, negative stimulation or positive, is there brought with us into our childhood, into our adulthood, from our childhood. And so our relationships are nothing but reflections then of our traumas. We marry our traumas, we attract people who will invoke our traumas, because this is the way for us to refine. And if relationships were actually seen from the perspective of a very powerful being, a very powerful tool for refinement and for self-observations in general, for spiritual work, we would not just easily get involved with whoever. We would understand, first of all, what we want, what our inclinations, and how we actually fall for which people we fall, what drives this attraction, what attracts us to a specific type of people. And maybe these people remind us of our parents, or remind of the dynamics we had with our parents, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of layers here. And of course, if we were at the age of at the golden age, where all people are refined, relationships are probably seen more in that case as the way to experience merging of souls and sharing and unconditional connection there. But at this day and age, this kind of experiences are either very rare or very temporary, because the foundation is still human trauma and human distortions, inclinations. There's no unconditional foundation on which these or such relationships can flourish. And even if people experience some glimpses of unconditional being and love and contentment, and they want to share it, the brutal reality of life usually steps on it or disturbs it, or these feelings are temporary, because there's still something more in it, in these beings. And so this something more is usually, again, of a traumatic, unrefined nature. And so the experience of love becomes like an experience of awakening, which again brings up all the negativity with it, the negativity to be refined. And so if relationships are, in this case, seen as the tool for refinement, perhaps they can still work. And people at some point, if they're both mature, can arrive at the point of soul merging or experiencing unity and unconditional connection. But the path is difficult, because to face traumatic experiences is very difficult, and sometimes can even lead people to a mental asylum, or to more difficulties, to more victimized states. So that's why there's a need for maturity and proper guidance in such a process. And as I see, most of our spirituality is spirituality of self-refinement, because we have polluted ourselves, corrupted ourselves through the entanglement with this reality. And obviously now, once we step on the true authentic path of spiritual evolution, refinement is the first thing. And all that which has been suppressed, all that which has been denied, has to be faced and brought up to the surface. And the process is definitely very, very complex and usually painful, because pain is the result of all this traumatic experiences, and is the result of corruption. And once there is refinement and pain dissipates or dissolves in the space of consciousness, the one realizes this one's being is blissful and unconditional. And so once pain is dissolved, love manifests and becomes, or is realized as, the ultimate reality. And it doesn't even need to be directed towards anyone. It's just the being, it's just this unconditional, equanimous, um, blissful existence of the refined consciousness, which is the essence of consciousness itself. So it's nothing that is added or achieved. It's just that there is refinement through which all the traumas are dissolved in the space of consciousness, and all what's left is just that blissful existence, which is not tangled with the external projection, and which just remains and dwells in its own uh, unconditional essence.